My name is Jesse Harlan, and I am about to tell you about the 7 days that changed my life forever. But before I take you to the beginning, I need to show you the end. Picture this, a moonless night in the Arizona desert. I am standing beneath a cottonwood tree, the same tree where this whole story started. In my hands, I hold a rope. At the other end of that rope, a man kneels in the dirt. His hands are bound behind his back. His mouth is gagged. But his eyes are wide open, staring at me with a hatred so pure it could burn holes through steel. I loop the noose around his neck. My hands do not shake. They should. This is the first time I have ever killed a man. But my hands are steady, like I have done this 1,000 times before. The man tries to speak through the gag. His muffled words sound like a question. Why? Why are you doing this? I do not answer with words. I answer by pulling the rope. They asked me later, after everything was over, why I saved those 7 Apache girls. I never told them the truth. The truth is this: I did not save them. They saved me, but I am getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back. 72 hours before that moonless night. Back to the morning when I still believed I was a man who would never kill anyone. I woke up screaming. Same dream. Always the same dream. In the dream, I see Anna running through the desert. Her white dress is soaked in blood. She is calling my name. Jesse, Jesse, help me. But I am frozen. My feet are stuck in the sand like roots. I watch her fall. I watch her hand reach out toward me. And I do nothing. Then I wake up, alone, in a bed that used to hold 2 people. The sun was already climbing over the eastern hills, turning the sky the color of burnt copper. I sat up, wiped the sweat from my face, and looked around the small wooden cabin that Anna and I had built together 5 years ago. Everything was exactly where she had left it. The blue curtains she sewed, the cast iron skillet hanging by the stove, the rocking chair where she used to sit and read while I worked outside. 3 years. It had been 3 years since she died, and I still could not bring myself to change a single thing. I pulled on my boots, splashed water from the basin onto my face, and walked outside. My dog Flint, a mangy gray mutt with one torn ear, was waiting by the porch. He wagged his tail once, then went back to staring at the horizon like he was expecting trouble. Smart dog. I owned a small ranch about 15 miles east of a town called Copper Ridge. 30 head of cattle, a few acres of barley. It was not much, but it was mine, or at least it used to feel like mine. These days it felt more like a prison, a place I stayed because I did not know where else to go. That morning, I planned to ride into town to buy ammunition. Wolves had been circling the ranch at night, and I needed to protect the herd. I saddled my horse, a chestnut mare named Rust, and started west across the desert. The ride should have taken 2 hours, but 30 minutes in, Flint started barking. Not his usual bark, this was different, frantic, desperate. Rust stopped walking. She refused to go forward, no matter how hard I urged her. I looked ahead and saw nothing but sand and sagebrush. Then I saw the tree, a single cottonwood tree, standing alone in the middle of the desert like a skeleton reaching toward the sky. And hanging from its branches, 7 dark shapes swaying in the wind. At first I thought they were vultures, dead birds strung up by someone's cruel joke. But as I rode closer, my chest tightened. My mouth went dry. They were not birds. They were 7 Apache girls hanging by their necks from 7 ropes. Their feet dangled 6 inches above the ground. Their faces were turned toward the earth. Beneath each of them, the sand was scratched and clawed, like they had fought against death with everything they had. I should have turned around right then. This was not my business. 3 years ago, I learned the hard way that getting involved in other people's trouble only brings you pain. I had paid that price with Anna's life. But as I turned Rust around to leave, something caught my eye. A glint of silver. Around the neck of the tallest girl, beneath the rope, I saw a necklace. A silver necklace with a small charm shaped like a tulip. I knew that necklace. I had given one just like it to Anna on our wedding day. Tulips were her favorite flower. She wore that necklace every single day until the day she died. I dismounted and walked slowly toward the girl. I reached up and touched her arm. Her skin was still warm. I pressed 2 fingers against her wrist. A pulse, faint. But there, she was alive. They were all alive. I pulled out my knife and started cutting. The first rope, the second, the third. Each one snapped with a sound like a branch breaking. The girls fell into the sand like sacks of grain, limp and silent. I worked fast, cutting all 7 ropes. When I got to the last one, the girl with the necklace, my hand hesitated. I do not know why. Maybe some part of me knew that once I cut this rope, my life would never be the same. I cut it anyway. She fell into my arms, and I lowered her gently to the ground. I turned each girl onto her side so they would not choke. One of them vomited black blood. Another one convulsed. I grabbed my canteen and gave each of them small sips of water, tilting their heads back, whispering words I am not even sure they could hear. Stay with me, just stay with me. Then the tallest girl, the one with the necklace, opened her eyes. Her hand shot up and grabbed the front of my shirt. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. They are coming back. I froze. Who is coming back? She did not answer. She just stared at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. Then her gaze dropped to the necklace around her neck. Her voice cracked. The white woman. She gave me this before she died. My heart stopped. I knelt down beside her, my voice shaking. What white woman? She sat up slowly, wincing in pain. Her hand went to her throat where the rope had left a deep red burn. 3 years ago, a white woman came to our village. She was bleeding. Shot in the stomach. She said a man named Virgil Cross poisoned the well. She tried to stop him. He shot her. Virgil Cross. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. Virgil Cross was the sheriff of Copper Ridge 3 years ago. Now he called himself a marshal, a man of the law, respected, feared. I swallowed hard. What did she say? Before she died? The girl reached up and unclasped the necklace. She held it out to me. On the back, engraved in tiny letters, were the words I had written myself. To Anna, forever yours, Jesse. The girl spoke again, her voice soft as the wind. She told me, find Jesse Harlan. Tell him I forgive him for not being there. I took the necklace. I held it in my hands. And for the first time in 3 years, I cried. For 3 years, I believed Anna had died of plague. That is what Sheriff Cross told me. That is what the town doctor said. A fever that swept through the area, natural causes, nothing anyone could have done. But now I knew the truth. Anna had discovered that Cross poisoned a well to kill the Apache families living near my ranch. She tried to warn them. He shot her. She ran to their village for help. And she died there in the arms of strangers while I sat at home believing a lie. I looked up at the 7 girls now sitting in the sand, watching me with wary eyes. My voice was rough. You were there when she died? The tall girl nodded. I was 14. I held her while she took her last breath. She said, do not let them kill anyone else. I stood up. I looked toward the west, toward Copper Ridge, where Virgil Cross walked free, wearing a badge, pretending to be a hero. I turned back to the girl. Where is Cross now? She met my eyes, and I saw something in them I had not seen in 3 years. Purpose. He calls himself Marshal Virgil Cross now, and he is the one who hung us. I built a makeshift shelter under the cottonwood tree using my bedroll and some dead branches. The sun was climbing higher, and the girls needed shade. I gave them what little food I had, dried beef, hard biscuits. They ate slowly, like they were afraid the food would disappear if they moved too fast. None of them spoke. They just watched me, suspicious, guarded. Finally, the tall girl broke the silence. My name is Shia. I am 24. These are my sisters. She pointed to each girl in turn. Kaya, 22 years old. She had long braided hair and a scar that ran from her lip to her chin. Her eyes were cold like a frozen river. Asha, 21. She was missing her left eye, but she held herself with the posture of a warrior. Neela, 20. Pale skin, trembling hands. She looked sick, like she was fighting off some invisible demon. Senna, 19. Her eyes were always moving, calculating, like she was measuring the value of everything around her. Tala, 18. The youngest of the older 6. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying. And Mira, 16, the youngest. She did not speak. She only used her hands, making signs I did not understand. Shia said, "Mira has not spoken since the night they killed our parents." I nodded slowly. I wanted to ask more, but I could see the pain in their faces. So instead, I asked the only question that mattered. What happened? Why did Cross hang you? Shia stared into the fire for a long time. Then she began to speak. 3 years ago, Marshal Cross and his men came to our village. They were looking for something, a map. We call it the Silver Water Map. It is drawn on deer hide, and it marks every underground water source and every silver vein within 500 miles. She paused, her jaw tight. My father was Elder Neshoba. He was the keeper of the map. Cross tortured him to get it. My father refused to speak. Her voice dropped to a whisper. So Cross burned the village. 50 people died that night. My father was burned alive. My mother ran out, begging Cross to stop. He shot her in front of us. I felt my stomach twist. Shia continued. We 7 sisters hid in a cellar. Shia, she was 21 then, covered our mouths so no one would hear us cry. We listened to the screams, the gunfire, the crackling of flames, and then silence. The next morning, we crawled out. Everyone was dead, just ash and bones. I swallowed hard. And Anna? Shia nodded. She came to the village 2 hours after Cross left. She was shot, bleeding badly. We tried to save her, but she died in my arms. I looked down at the necklace in my hand. I did not know. Cross told me she died of plague. Shia's eyes hardened. Cross lied, and last week he came back. He captured us, hung us slowly, asked us about the map. I looked at her. Do you have the map? She said nothing for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yes, but we would rather die than give it to him. Suddenly, Senna, the 19-year-old, stood up. Her voice was sharp. Shia, you are lying. We should not die for a piece of leather. Shia turned. Senna, sit down. Senna shook her head. No, if we give Cross the map, he will let us go. We can start over. Kaya stood up, her eyes like ice. Start over? At the cost of betraying our parents? Senna shot back. Our parents are dead. They do not need the map anymore. Asha, the one-eyed girl, spoke quietly. The map is not just our legacy. It is the survival of hundreds of Apache people still living in this desert. If Cross gets it, he will control all of Arizona. Tala, the 18-year-old, started crying. But if we do not give it to him, Cross will kill us. And I think Father is still alive. Cross is holding him. Everyone went silent. Shia turned. Tala, what are you saying? Tala's voice trembled. When Cross hung me, he whispered in my ear, Your father is still alive. In my cellar. If you want to see him, give me the map. Shia's face went pale. That is impossible. Father died 3 years ago, Tala whispered. But what if there is even a 1% chance? I stood up. I looked at the 7 girls, each one carrying a different kind of pain. How much time do you have? Shia answered. Cross said he will return in 3 days. If we do not have the map, he will bring the army and burn this entire area to the ground. I nodded. Then we have 72 hours. Senna glared at me. We? You are not Apache. This is not your fight. I pulled out Anna's necklace and held it up. 3 years ago I was not there when Anna needed me. She died alone, in pain, in a village far from home. She died trying to save you. I looked at Shia. Now I owe her, and I owe you. I will help you kill Cross, but on one condition. Shia asked, What condition? I said we find out the truth. If your father is alive, we save him. If he is dead, we bury Cross with that map." Shia stared at me for a long time, then she nodded. Agreed. That night, after the others had fallen asleep, Shia pulled me aside. We walked away from the fire into the shadows. She reached into her shirt and pulled out a rolled piece of leather. She unfolded it carefully. The silver water map. It was drawn in dried blood on tanned deer hide. 37 marks indicated water sources scattered across the desert, and in the center, a large X with words written in Apache and English. "Silver vein beneath Copper Ridge." I stared at it. "Cross wants this silver?" Shia shook her head. "It is not just about silver. If he controls the water, he controls everyone. He can push every Apache off this land and claim it all for himself." I looked at her. "Then why do we not just destroy it?" She met my eyes. "Because if we destroy it, 200 Apache people scattered across this desert will lose access to water. They will die of thirst." I understood then. This was not about revenge. This was about survival. For an entire people. Shia's voice was steady. "We have 72 hours to find my father, to kill Cross, and to decide who deserves to hold this map." I nodded. From that moment on, I was no longer Jesse Harlan, the quiet rancher who lived alone with his ghosts. I was an ally to 7 suns rising in the desert, and somewhere in the distance, Virgil Cross was waiting. The first night under the cottonwood tree, I did not sleep. I sat with my back against the trunk, watching the 7 girls. They slept close to each other, like wolves in a pack. Even in sleep, they were tense, ready to run, ready to fight. Shia was the only one who stayed awake with me. She sat across the fire, sharpening a knife on a flat stone. The sound was rhythmic. Scrape, scrape, scrape. Finally, she spoke without looking up. "You loved her, Anna." It was not a question. I nodded. "Yes." Shia paused. "She loved you too, even at the end. She kept saying your name." I felt a lump in my throat. I should have been there. Shia looked up at me. Her eyes were hard, but not unkind. "You could not have known. Cross is a liar. He fooled everyone." I shook my head. "That does not make it right." She went back to sharpening her knife. "No, it does not. But you are here now. That is what matters." We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked the question that had been eating at me since I cut them down. "Why did Cross hang you like that?" Slowly. "Why not just shoot you?" Shia's jaw tightened. "Because he wanted us to suffer. He wanted us to feel what it is like to die slowly. And he wanted us to break, to beg, to give him the map. Did you? Beg?" She looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something close to a smile. "No, we did not say a word. For 7 hours, we hung there, and we stayed silent." I stared at her. 7 hours? She nodded. "He thought we were dead when he left. He planned to come back later to bury the bodies and search them for the map. He did not know we were still alive." I felt a chill run down my spine. These were not victims. These were warriors. The next morning, we set out at dawn. Our destination was the Old Mission, an abandoned church 15 miles north. According to Liam, one of Cross's men, that was where Cross kept his prisoners. If Tala was right, if their father was still alive, he would be there. Shia led the way. I brought up the rear. The 6 sisters moved between us like shadows. They did not talk. They communicated with hand signals. A raised fist meant stop. 2 fingers pointed meant scouts ahead. A closed hand meant danger. After 2 hours of riding, Kaya dropped to her knees and examined the ground. She touched a hoof print in the sand, sniffed the air, then signaled to the others. 3 men, on horseback, heading east. 6 hours ago. I was amazed. "How can you tell all that?" Kaya did not answer. She just pointed to the hoof print. "This one limps. This one carries 2 riders." Asha, the one-eyed girl, closed her eyes and tilted her head. "I smell Virginia tobacco. Cross's men smoke that. We followed the trail for another hour until we reached a narrow canyon. At the bottom, 3 men sat around a campfire, cooking beans and laughing. Shia raised her hand. The girls melted into the rocks like ghosts. I watched as Kaya crawled silently toward one of the men, a knife in her hand. But then she stopped. She stared at the man's face. Her hand started trembling. I moved closer. "What is wrong?" Kaya whispered. "That is Liam, the man I used to love." In the flicker of firelight, I saw it. Pain, anger, betrayal. All of it written on her face. 4 years ago, Kaya told me later, she had fallen in love with a young cowboy named Liam. They met in secret because an Apache girl and a white man could not be together openly. Liam promised to take her away, to start a new life. But on the night of the massacre, Kaya saw Liam standing beside Cross. Liam held a torch. Liam set fire to her home. He betrayed her for money. Now, 4 years later, Kaya crouched in the shadows with a knife in her hand, staring at the man who had destroyed her life. Shia whispered, "Kaya, you do not have to do this." Kaya shook her head. "Yes, I do." She crept forward. The blade touched Liam's neck. He jerked awake, turned, saw her face. His eyes went wide. "Kaya? You are alive?" Kaya's voice was cold. "You thought you killed me, did you not?" Liam stammered. "No, you do not understand. Cross forced me. I had no choice." Kaya pressed the blade harder. "You had a choice. You chose money over me." Liam started crying. "Please, I loved you. I still love you." Kaya was silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice steady. "You did love me, but you loved money more. And now, I love justice more than you." She did not stab him in the neck. She stabbed him in the thigh, deep enough to cripple him, but not kill him. He screamed, but Senna was already there, covering his mouth. Kaya leaned close. "You are going to tell us where Cross keeps his prisoners. If you do not, I will let you bleed out right here." Liam, tears streaming down his face, pointed north. "The old mission. Beneath the church. There is a cellar." Kaya nodded. Then she stabbed him again, this time in the heart. Liam died with his eyes open, staring at her. Kaya stood up, wiped the blade on his shirt, and walked away without looking back. Shia caught up to her. "Are you all right?" Kaya's voice was flat. "I died 3 years ago. Now I am just a ghost, getting revenge." We reached the old mission just before sunset. The church was a ruin. The roof had collapsed. The walls were cracked. Vultures circled overhead. Asha closed her eyes and sniffed. "I smell blood. Old blood." Neela, the pale girl who had been shaking all day, whispered, "I am scared." Shia took her hand. "You are stronger than you think." We stepped inside. The floorboards creaked. Rats scattered into the shadows. I found a cellar door hidden beneath a pile of broken pews. It was locked with a heavy iron chain. Tala ran forward. "Father, Father, are you down there?" No answer. I shot the lock off with my revolver. The sound echoed like thunder. I pulled the door open. Below was darkness. We descended into the cellar. The smell was unbearable. Rot, decay, death. In the corner, we found a skeleton, dressed in Apache leather, a headband still tied around the skull. Tala fell to her knees. She held the bones and sobbed, "Father, I am sorry. I am so sorry I came too late." Shia knelt beside her sister. She picked up a piece of cloth from the skeleton. It was their father's headband. He died here, alone, in the dark. On the wall beside the skeleton, scratched into the stone with blood, were words in Apache and English. "Shia, protect your sisters. The map is their future. Do not let hate consume you." Nashoba. Shia read the words aloud. Her hands were shaking. I put my hand on her shoulder. "He loved you. Until the very end." Shia nodded. Then her voice turned to ice. "Cross killed my father, locked him in here to die slowly. Now I will do the same to Cross." We buried Elder Nashoba's bones beneath an oak tree near the old mission. There were no prayers, just silence. Mira, the youngest, the one who could not speak, placed a handful of wildflowers on the grave. She made a sign with her hands. Shia translated. Mira says, "Father, I will avenge you." I asked Shia, "What now?" She looked toward the western horizon, where the sun was setting. Cross will come to the cottonwood tree at sunset tomorrow. He thinks we are dead. He will come to collect the bodies and search them for the map. We will be there, waiting for him. That night we camped under the stars. The 7 sisters sat around the fire, sharpening weapons, checking bowstrings, preparing for war. I sat apart, cleaning my revolver. Shia came and sat beside me. "Jesse, tomorrow people will die. Maybe us, maybe Cross, maybe both." I nodded. "I know." She looked at me. "Are you ready for that?" I thought about Anna. I thought about the 3 years I spent doing nothing, hiding, running. I looked Shia in the eyes. "Yes, I am ready." She held out her hand. I shook it. Tomorrow we would face Virgil Cross, and one way or another this would end. Day 2 began with blood on the horizon. The sun rose red and angry, like the desert itself knew what was coming. I woke to the sound of Shia sharpening her blade, the same rhythmic scrape I had fallen asleep to. She had not slept at all. We buried our camp before dawn, scattering the ashes, covering our tracks. The 7 sisters moved with a precision that made me realize I was not traveling with survivors. I was traveling with soldiers. Our plan was simple, brutal. We had less than 36 hours before Cross expected to return to the cottonwood tree, but we were not going to wait for him. We were going to hunt him first. Shia believed Cross was holed up in a place called Devil's Gorge, a narrow canyon 10 miles west, where he and his men could defend themselves from any direction. If we could get there before sunset, we could set a trap. Force him to come to us on our terms. But first, we had to cross open desert. 12 miles of nothing but sand, rock, and rattlesnakes. No cover, no water, no mercy from the sun. Kaya took point. She moved like a shadow, reading the land like it was written in a language only she understood. Every 20 minutes, she would stop, kneel, touch the ground, taste the air. After an hour, she raised her fist. We all froze. She pointed to a set of tracks barely visible in the hard pan. Horses, 4 of them, heading southwest. Fresh, maybe 2 hours old. Asha moved up beside her, closed her one good eye, and tilted her head like she was listening to something the rest of us could not hear. She whispered, "I smell gun oil and sweat. White men, nervous." Shia looked at me. "Cross's scouts. He knows we are alive." I felt my jaw tighten. "How?" Senna, the pragmatic one, answered. "Someone found Liam's body. They sent word back." Neela, still shaking but standing straighter than yesterday, said, "Then they are hunting us too." Shia nodded slowly. "Good. Let them come." We changed direction, angling toward a cluster of rock formations that rose out of the desert like broken teeth. If Cross's men were tracking us, we would give them something to find. Tala, the one who had hoped her father was alive, walked beside me. Her eyes were still red from crying, but her voice was steady. "Jesse, do you think we can win?" I glanced at her. I did not lie. "I do not know. Cross has more men, more guns, more experience." She nodded. "But we have something he does not." "What is that?" She smiled, a sad, tired smile. Nothing left to lose. By midday the heat was unbearable. The sun hammered down on us like a blacksmith's anvil. Mira, the youngest, stumbled. Shia caught her before she fell. "We need water," I said. Kaya pointed to a shallow draw between 2 ridges. "There is a seep, half a mile. We can refill there." We moved quickly. As we approached the draw, Asha suddenly grabbed my arm. Her voice was urgent. "Stop!" I froze. "What?" She pointed to the ground. "Footprints. Fresh. Boot prints. Not Apache moccasins. Boots with nails in the soles." Shia crouched low. "How many?" Asha closed her eye again, breathing deeply. 4 men, waiting, upwind, an ambush. Shia made a series of hand signals. The sisters spread out without a sound, vanishing into the rocks like smoke. I drew my revolver and pressed myself against a boulder, trying to control my breathing. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Just the wind, just the distant cry of a hawk. Then a gunshot cracked the air. A bullet ricocheted off the rock inches from my head. I ducked, my heart hammering. More gunfire erupted from 3 directions. Cross's men had the high ground, firing down into the draw. But they made a mistake. They assumed we would panic, run, scatter. Instead, the 7 sisters attacked. Kaya scaled the ridge to my left, moving so fast I barely saw her. She reached the first shooter before he could reload. Her knife flashed once. The man fell without a sound. Asha, despite being half-blind, fired an arrow with terrifying accuracy. It caught the second man in the shoulder, spinning him around. Senna was on him a heartbeat later, a rope in her hands. She looped it around his neck and pulled. He dropped like a stone. The third man tried to run. Neela, shaking but determined, hurled a clay pot filled with some kind of liquid. It shattered against his face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes. Poison. Cactus venom, maybe. He fell to his knees, blind and writhing. The fourth man, realizing he was alone, threw down his rifle and raised his hands. "Do not shoot. Do not shoot. I surrender." Shaya walked up to him slowly, her knife in her hand. She did not look angry. She looked calm, cold. She asked him one question. "Where is Cross?" the man stammered. "Devil's Gorge. He is waiting there with 15 men. He knows you are coming. He is ready." Shaya nodded. "Thank you." Then she slit his throat. I stared at her. He surrendered. She turned to me, her face unreadable. He was one of the men who burned my village. I remember his face. I said nothing. What could I say? This was not my war, this was theirs, and war has no mercy. We refilled our canteens at the seep and moved on. By late afternoon, we reached the edge of Devil's Gorge. It was a nightmare of a place. Sheer rock walls on both sides, barely wide enough for 2 horses to walk side by side. If Cross had men positioned on the cliffs above, we would be sitting ducks. Shaya studied the terrain. She pointed to a narrow trail that led up the side of the gorge. If we can get to the top before they see us, we can turn their ambush around. Kaya shook her head. "That trail is too exposed. They will see us halfway up." Senna, always calculating, said, "Then we split up. Half of us go through the gorge, draw their fire. The other half climb the trail and attack from behind." It was a suicide plan, but it was the only plan we had. Shaya divided us into 2 groups. She would lead Kaya, Neela, and Mira through the gorge. I would climb the trail with Asha, Senna, and Tala. Before we separated, Shaya looked at me. "If we do not make it, finish this. Kill Cross. Do not let him walk free." I nodded. "You have my word." She held my gaze for a moment longer, then turned and disappeared into the gorge with her sisters. The climb was brutal. The trail was barely a goat path, loose rocks and crumbling edges. Asha led the way, her one good eye scanning every foothold. Senna and Tala followed, silent and focused. Halfway up, we heard gunfire echo from below. They had sprung the trap. I wanted to look down to see if Shaya and the others were okay, but I could not stop. We had to reach the top. Asha moved like a mountain goat, never hesitating. Senna was right behind her. Tala struggled, her hands bleeding from gripping the rocks, but she did not complain. She just kept climbing. Finally, we reached the top. Below us, the gorge opened up like a wound in the earth. I could see Shia and the others pinned down behind boulders. Cross's men were firing from ledges on both sides, bullets kicking up dust all around them. 15 men, just like the scout said. Asha knocked an arrow. Senna drew a knife. Tala picked up a rock the size of a melon. I looked at them. "Ready?" They nodded. I stood up, aimed my revolver, and fired. The first shot took a man in the back. He tumbled off the ledge, screaming. Asha's arrow took the second man through the neck. Senna threw her knife, and it buried itself in a third man's shoulder. He staggered backward, lost his footing, and fell. Tala hurled the rock. It struck a fourth man in the head with a sickening crack. Chaos erupted. Cross's men spun around, realizing they were being attacked from behind. Half of them turned to fire at us. The other half kept shooting at Shia. That was their mistake. The moment they divided their attention, Shia and her group attacked. Kaya sprinted up the gorge wall like a spider, her knife flashing. Neela threw more poison pots, blinding 2 men. Mira, silent and deadly, drove a spear into the gut of a man twice her size. Shia herself moved through the chaos like a ghost. She did not waste energy. Every movement was precise. Every strike was fatal. Within minutes, 10 of Cross's men were dead. The remaining 5 tried to retreat, scrambling up the rocks, but there was nowhere to go. We had them surrounded. One by one, they fell. And then silence. I climbed down into the gorge. The 7 sisters were covered in dust and blood, but they were alive. All of them. Shia looked up at me, breathing hard. "Is anyone hurt?" Neela had a gash on her arm. Tala was limping. But no one was seriously injured. I shook my head. "We are okay." Shia nodded. "Then we need to move." Cross was not here, which means he knows we are coming. We searched the bodies. Most of them carried nothing useful, but one man had a folded piece of paper in his pocket. Senna opened it. It was a map, hand-drawn, crude, but clear. It showed the cottonwood tree, and a single word written in bold letters: bait. I felt my stomach drop. He is not waiting for us at the cottonwood tree. He is using it as bait, to draw us in. Shia's eyes narrowed. Where is he really? Kaya knelt beside one of the dead men and pulled a badge from his vest. It was not a marshal's badge. It was a deputy's badge from Copper Ridge. She looked up. These are not Cross's hired guns. These are lawmen. Asha said quietly, Cross has the law on his side. He is not just a criminal. He is the system. Senna cursed under her breath. Then how do we fight him? Shia stood up, her jaw set. We do not fight him like lawmen. We fight him like Apache. That night we camped in a hidden ravine far from Devil's Gorge. No fire, no light, just darkness and the sound of the wind. Shia pulled me aside. Jesse, I need to tell you something. I listened. She reached into her shirt and pulled out the silver water map. She unfolded it carefully. I have been thinking about what Cross said, about the map, about why he wants it so badly. I nodded. He wants to control the water, control the land. She shook her head. It is more than that. Look. She pointed to the center of the map, where the large X marked the silver vein beneath Copper Ridge. 3 years ago, when Cross came to our village, he told my father something. He said, I do not want your land. I want to erase you. I frowned. What does that mean? Shia's voice was cold. Cross is not just greedy. He is ashamed. He is half Apache. His mother was one of us. His father was white. He grew up hated by both sides, so he chose one. He chose to be white. And to prove it, he has to destroy everything Apache. I stared at her. He is killing his own people to prove he is not one of them? She nodded. That is why he is so brutal. It is not about money. It is about identity. He thinks if he erases us, he can erase the part of himself he hates. I felt a chill run through me. That makes him more dangerous than I thought. Shia folded the map. Yes, because he will never stop. Even if we give him the map, he will kill us anyway. We are a reminder of what he is trying to forget. I looked at the 7 sisters, sleeping in the shadows. What do we do? Shia met my eyes. We use the map, but not to give him, to trap him. How? She smiled. A cold, calculated smile. The map shows 37 water sources, but 3 of them are false. My father put them there to protect the real locations. If someone tries to dig at those spots, they will find nothing but dry sand and death. I understood. We lead Cross to one of the false locations. Let him think he has won, and when he is distracted, we strike. Shia nodded. Exactly. I asked, which false location? She pointed to a spot on the map. About 20 miles south, a place called Scorpion Flats. It is a dry lake bed, no shade, no cover. If Cross sends men there to dig, they will be exposed, vulnerable. I looked at her. And we will be waiting. She folded the map and put it back in her shirt. Tomorrow we send Cross a message. We let him think we are willing to trade the map for our lives. I frowned. Will he believe it? Shia's smile widened. He will, because men like Cross always believe they have won. The next morning, we rode to the outskirts of Copper Ridge. We stayed hidden in the rocks, watching the town wake up. Senna volunteered to deliver the message. She was the best liar among the sisters, calm under pressure, able to play whatever role she needed. She rode into town alone, unarmed, her hands raised. Within minutes, she was surrounded by deputies. They dragged her to the marshal's office. From our hiding spot, I watched through a spyglass as Senna was brought before Virgil Cross. He was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with silver hair and ice-blue eyes. He wore a black coat and a silver badge. He looked every inch the lawman, but I knew what he really was, a monster. Cross circled Senna like a wolf. I could not hear what they were saying, but I saw Senna hand him a piece of paper. The message Shia had written. It said, "We will trade the map for safe passage. Meet us at Scorpion Flats tomorrow at noon. Come alone or we burn the map." Cross read it. Then he laughed. He crumpled the paper and threw it on the floor. He said something to Senna. She nodded, her face blank. Then Cross let her go. She walked out of the office, climbed onto her horse, and rode slowly out of town. When she reached us, she was shaking. Shia grabbed her. What did he say? Senna took a breath. He said, "Tell your sisters I will meet them at Scorpion Flats, but I will not come alone. And I will not let any of you leave alive." Shia nodded. Good. That is exactly what we wanted him to say. We rode hard through the night, reaching Scorpion Flats just before dawn. It was exactly as Shia described, a vast, flat expanse of cracked earth. No trees, no rocks, nothing but open ground for miles in every direction. A killing field. Shia studied the terrain. Cross will bring men, lots of them. He will surround us, Kaya asked. Then how do we survive? Shia smiled. We do not survive. We disappear. She pointed to the ground. This lake bed is not solid. In some places the crust is only a few inches thick. Beneath it is mud. Thick, deep mud. Quicksand. My father marked those spots on the map, the real map. But Cross does not know that. I understood. We lure them onto the weak spots. Let the earth swallow them. Shia nodded. Exactly. We spent the morning setting the trap. Using the real map, we marked safe paths with small stones, invisible unless you knew what to look for. Then we positioned ourselves at the edges of the lake bed, hidden in shallow trenches we dug and covered with brush. At noon, the sound of horses echoed across the flats. Virgil Cross arrived with 20 men, all armed, all ready to kill. He rode to the center of the lake bed and stopped. His voice boomed across the empty land. "I am here." "Where are you?" Shia stood up from her hiding place, alone, holding the map above her head. Cross smiled. "Smart girl. Hand it over, and maybe I will let you live." Shia walked slowly toward him. As she did, I saw Cross's men begin to spread out, forming a circle around her. She stopped 10 feet away. "I want your word. Safe passage for all 7 of us." Cross laughed. "You have my word." He was lying. I could see it in his eyes. Shia knew it too. She held out the map. Cross reached for it. And then she dropped it. The wind caught it, blowing it across the lake bed. Cross cursed and spurred his horse forward. His men followed. That was the mistake. 3 of them rode directly onto the weak spots. The ground gave way. Their horses screamed, thrashing as they sank into the mud. The men tried to jump free, but the quicksand pulled them down, fast and merciless. Chaos erupted. The rest of Cross's men tried to retreat, but now they did not know where the safe ground was. 2 more sank, then another. Shia whistled. The 7 sisters rose from their hiding spots and attacked. Arrows flew, knives flashed, ropes snared. I fired my revolver, taking down a man trying to shoot Asha. Kaya sprinted across the safe path, leaping onto a horse and dragging the rider to the ground. Neela threw her poison pots, blinding men who stumbled into the mud and sank. Within minutes, 15 of Cross's men were dead or dying. Cross himself sat on his horse in the center of the lake bed, surrounded by sinking bodies, holding the map in his trembling hands. Shia walked up to him, calm as death. "It is over, Cross." He looked down at her, his face twisted with rage and fear. "You think you have won? I am the law. I am untouchable." Shia reached up and pulled him off his horse. He fell hard onto the solid ground. She knelt beside him, her knife at his throat. "You are not the law. You are a coward who killed his own people to feel like he belonged." Cross spat at her. "I did what I had to survive." Shia pressed the blade harder. "So did we. But she did not kill him. Not yet." She stood up and looked at me. "Jesse, tie him up. We are taking him back to the cottonwood tree." I asked, "Why?" Shia's voice was ice. "Because I want him to see where this ends." We bound Virgil Cross with the same ropes he had used to hang the 7 sisters, his hands tied behind his back. His feet hobbled so he could walk but not run. We gave him no water, no shade. We made him walk the 12 miles back to the cottonwood tree under the burning sun. He stumbled, he cursed, he begged. We ignored him. By the time we reached the tree, the sun was setting. The sky was the color of dried blood. The cottonwood stood exactly as I had found it 6 days ago, its branches reaching toward the heavens like skeletal fingers. Shia pushed Cross to his knees beneath the tree, the same spot where her sisters had hung. Cross looked up at her, sweat pouring down his face. "You cannot do this. I am a United States Marshal. If you kill me, the army will come. They will hunt you down." Shia knelt in front of him. "Let them come." She pulled out the silver water map and unfolded it in front of his face. "You wanted this so badly. You killed 50 people for it. You tortured my father. You hung us to die, all for this piece of leather." Cross's eyes locked onto the map. "Give it to me, please. I will give you anything. Money, land, freedom." Shia smiled, a cold, empty smile. Then she did something I did not expect. She stood up, walked to the small fire we had built, and held the map over the flames. Cross screamed, "No, no, do not." Shia's hand trembled. For a moment I thought she would drop it into the fire, but then she lowered it. She turned to me. "Jesse, do you have the canteen?" I understood immediately. I pulled out the canteen that Neela had prepared that morning, the one filled with water mixed with cactus venom, the same poison that caused paralysis, hallucinations, and a slow, agonizing death. I handed it to Shia. She walked back to Cross and knelt beside him. 3 years ago, you poisoned a well. You killed 12 Apache people, and you killed Anna Harlan." Cross's face went pale. Shia continued, "You used water, the source of life, as a weapon of death. So now, you will die the same way." She uncorked the canteen and forced it to his lips. Cross tried to turn his head, but Kaya grabbed his hair and held him still. Shia poured the water into his mouth. He choked, sputtered, but swallowed. When the canteen was empty, Shia stood up. Cross coughed violently. "What did you give me?" Shia's voice was calm. "Death. Slow death. The same kind you gave to others. You will feel your body shut down piece by piece, your hands first, then your legs, then your lungs. It will take hours, and you will be awake for all of it." Cross's face twisted in terror. "No, no, please. Give me the antidote. I will give you anything." Shia turned her back on him. "There is no antidote." She walked away. The other sisters followed. I stood there for a moment looking down at Cross. He was already starting to tremble. The poison was fast. He looked up at me, his eyes desperate. "Harlan, you are a white man. You understand law, justice. You cannot let them do this." I crouched down so we were eye level. "You are right. I do understand justice. And this is it." I stood up and walked away. Behind me, Cross began to scream. An hour later, I walked back to the cottonwood tree alone. Cross was still alive. Barely. His body convulsed. Foam dripped from his mouth, but he was conscious, aware. I stood over him. In my hand, I held a rope, the same rope he had used to hang Shia. I looped it around his neck. His eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but only a gurgle came out. I pulled the rope tight, not enough to strangle him, just enough to let him feel it. Then I did something he did not expect. I cut the rope. I threw it into the sand beside him. Cross stared at me, confusion in his dying eyes. I knelt down. My voice was quiet. 3 years ago, you took everything from me, my wife, my peace, my reason to live. I should hang you right now, watch you die the same way you tried to kill them. I paused. But I am not you, and I will not become you. I stood up. The poison will kill you in an hour, maybe 2. You will die knowing that the people you tried to erase are the ones who decided your fate, not me, them. And you will die knowing that I chose mercy, because that is what Anna would have wanted. I walked away. Behind me, Cross made a sound. Half laugh, half sob. I did not look back. We made camp 100 yards from the cottonwood tree, far enough that we could not hear him, but close enough that we could see the tree silhouetted against the darkening sky. The 7 sisters sat around the fire. No one spoke. They just stared into the flames, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Tala broke the silence. "Is it over?" Shia did not answer right away. She looked at each of her sisters, one by one. Then she said, "Not yet." Senna frowned. "What do you mean?" "Cross is dying. His men are dead. The map is safe." Shia shook her head. "Cross said something to me, back at Scorpion Flats, before we brought him here." Kaya leaned forward. "What did he say?" Shia's voice was quiet. "He said, 'Even if you kill me, you will never be free, because the world will always see you as savages, and no one will remember your side of the story.'" The fire crackled. The wind whispered through the desert. Asha spoke, her one good eye reflecting the firelight. "Then we make sure they remember." Neela, still pale but no longer shaking, said, "How?" Shia looked at me. "Jesse, you are a white man, a rancher, respected in Copper Ridge. If you tell the story, people will listen." I shook my head. "I am no storyteller." Shia's gaze did not waver. "You do not have to be. You just have to tell the truth. What Cross did, what we did, why we did it." I looked at the 7 women around the fire. Warriors, survivors, sisters. I nodded slowly. "I will tell it. I promise." Shia smiled for the first time in days, a real smile. "Thank you." That night, I did not sleep. I sat by the fire thinking about Anna, about the life we had planned together. The children we would never have, the future that was stolen from us. But I also thought about the 7 sisters, about the strength it took to survive what they had survived, about the choice they made to fight instead of run. And I realized something. Anna had not died in vain. She had died trying to save them. And in saving them, she had saved me too. She had given me a reason to stop hiding, to stop being a ghost in my own life. Just before dawn, Mira, the youngest sister, came and sat beside me. She had not spoken since the night her parents were killed. But now, she looked at me and opened her mouth. Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper, but it was there. "Thank you." I stared at her. Those were the first words she had spoken in 3 years. She continued, her voice growing stronger, "For believing in us, for standing with us, for seeing us as people, not just savages." I felt a lump in my throat. "You were never savages. You were warriors." She smiled, a small, fragile smile. Then she went back to the fire and sat beside her sisters. I watched the sun rise, slow and red, like the desert was being reborn. At dawn, we walked back to the cottonwood tree. Virgil Cross was dead. His body lay twisted in the sand, his eyes open, staring at nothing. His face was frozen in a mask of agony. Shia knelt beside him. She reached down and pulled the marshal's badge from his coat. She held it up to the light, then threw it into the sand. "You were never the law. You were just a man, a broken, hateful man. She stood up and turned to her sisters. "It is finished." But just as she said those words, the sound of horses echoed across the desert. We turned. A column of riders appeared on the horizon. 20 soldiers, United States cavalry, led by an officer in a blue uniform. My heart sank. Cross had sent word before we captured him. The army was coming. The officer rode forward and stopped his horse 20 feet from us. He was a young man, maybe 30, with a clean-shaven face and hard eyes. He looked at Cross's body, then at us. "I am Lieutenant Marcus Grant. I was sent here by Marshal Cross to apprehend 7 Apache fugitives accused of murder and theft." Shia stepped forward. "We are not fugitives. We are survivors." Grant's expression did not change. "That is for a court to decide. You are all under arrest." I stepped between them. "Lieutenant, you do not understand. Cross was the criminal. He murdered 50 Apache people. He poisoned a well. He hung these women to extort a map from them." Grant looked at me. "And who are you?" "My name is Jesse Harlan. I own a ranch 15 miles east of Copper Ridge. I am a witness to everything that happened." Grant studied me for a long moment. Then he looked back at Shia. "If what Harlan says is true, you should have come to the authorities, not taken the law into your own hands." Shia's voice was steel. The authorities were Cross. He was the law. Who were we supposed to turn to? Grant had no answer for that. He dismounted and walked over to Cross's body. He knelt down, examined it, then stood up. "How did he die?" Shia did not hesitate. "Poison. The same poison he used to kill our people." Grant's jaw tightened. "You admit to killing a United States Marshal?" Shia met his eyes. "I admit to executing a murderer." The soldiers behind Grant raised their rifles. My hand went to my revolver, but I knew it was pointless. We were outnumbered, outgunned. This was the end. But then Grant raised his hand. "Stand down." The soldiers hesitated, then lowered their weapons. Grant turned to Shia. "I need proof, real proof, not just your word." Shia reached into her shirt and pulled out the silver water map. She unfolded it and handed it to Grant. "This is what Cross killed for. It shows every water source and silver vein in this territory. My father, Elder Neshoba, was the keeper of this map. Cross tortured him to death trying to get it. When he failed, he came after us." Grant studied the map. His eyes widened as he realized what he was holding. "This map, if it is real, it is worth a fortune." Shia nodded. "And Cross wanted it all for himself. He was going to use it to push every Apache off this land, to claim everything." Grant looked up. "Why did you not just give it to him? Save yourselves?" Asha, the one-eyed archer, stepped forward. "Because this map is not just about silver. It is about water. Water is life. If Cross controlled the water, he would control who lives and who dies. We could not let that happen." Grant folded the map carefully. "If I take this map, what do you want in return?" Shia's answer was immediate. "We want it to belong to everyone. Not one person, not one tribe, not one government. We want the water sources shared, equally, between Apache and white settlers." Grant stared at her. "You are willing to give up this map? Give up all that wealth?" Shia nodded. "We do not want wealth. We want justice and survival for everyone." Grant was silent for a long time. Then he looked at his men. They were watching him, waiting for orders. He turned back to Shia. "I will take this map to Washington. I will present your case. I will testify that Cross was corrupt, that he committed atrocities. And I will recommend that the water sources on this map be declared public resources, available to all settlers and tribes equally." Shia's voice was cautious. "And what happens to us?" Grant took a deep breath. "Legally, I should arrest you. But legally, Cross should have arrested you, not hung you. So I am going to make a choice." He looked at his men again, then back at us. Grant was silent for a long time. His men watched him, waiting. Finally, he spoke. His voice was heavy. "What you did was illegal. By every law I swore to uphold, I should arrest you. execute you." He paused. But Cross broke a higher law. He murdered innocents. He tortured, he poisoned, and he did it wearing a badge. Grant looked at his men. "If I arrest these women, I am telling the world that the law protects men like Cross. That power is more important than justice." He turned back to Shia. "I cannot do that. I will not do that." He took a breath. "As far as I am concerned, Virgil Cross died of poison he ingested while attempting to steal Apache resources. These women were never here. This conversation never happened." One of his soldiers spoke up. "Sir, are you sure?" Grant's voice was steel. "I am sure. And if any man here disagrees, he can report me to Washington, but he will do it alone." No one spoke. Grant nodded. "Then it is settled. Poisoned by contaminated water, he drank in the desert. You 7 women were never here, and Jesse Harlan is a witness to nothing." I felt the tension drain from my body. Grant continued, "But if I ever hear of you taking the law into your own hands again, I will come for you, understood?" Shia nodded. "Understood." Grant mounted his horse. He looked down at us one last time. "You did a hard thing, maybe the right thing, but it was still a hard thing. I hope you can live with it." Shia's voice was quiet. "We already have." Grant nodded. Then he turned his horse and rode away. His men followed. We stood in silence, watching them disappear into the desert. When they were gone, Kaya let out a long breath. "We are free." Tala started crying, not from sadness, from relief. Neela collapsed to her knees, shaking. Asha put her hand on Senna's shoulder. Senna, always the pragmatist, simply nodded. And Mira, the youngest, the one who had been silent for 3 years, spoke again. "We did it. We actually did it." Shia turned to me. "Jesse, what will you do now?" I looked at the cottonwood tree, at the place where this had all begun. Then I looked at Anna's necklace, still hanging around my neck. "I am going home, to my ranch, and I am going to rebuild." Shia nodded. "Alone?" I shook my head. "No, not alone." I looked at the 7 sisters. "You are all welcome, if you want. The ranch is big enough. There is water, land, room to build." Shia looked at her sisters. They looked at each other. Kaya spoke first. "I have nowhere else to go." Asha nodded. "Nor do I." Neela whispered, "I need somewhere to heal." Senna said, "I can help build, trade, make it work." Tala smiled. "I always wanted to raise horses." And Mira, her voice still fragile but growing stronger, said, "I want to learn to sing again." Shia looked at me. Then we accept. 6 months later. The ranch looked different. Where there had been 1 small cabin, there were now 8. 7 smaller homes built in a circle around mine. Each one built by hand. Each one a home. The cattle had multiplied. The barley fields were green. And a new well had been dug, using the knowledge from the Silverwater map before it was taken to Washington. The map had been declared a national resource. The water sources were now protected and shared. Apache families and white settlers used them together. It was not perfect. There were still fights, still prejudice. But it was better. Shia's belly had grown round. She was 7 months pregnant. The father had died in the massacre 3 years ago, but she carried his child with pride. She had decided to name the baby Anna if it was a girl. When she told me, I cried. Kaya had started training the younger Apache women in self-defense. She was hard on them, but they respected her. Asha hunted every day, bringing back deer and rabbits. Her aim with one eye was better than most men with two. Neela had stopped shaking. She had built a small garden where she grew medicinal herbs. She was learning to heal instead of poison. Senna had become our trader, riding into Copper Ridge every week to sell goods and buy supplies. People respected her sharp mind and fair prices. Tala had started breeding horses. She had a gift with them. They trusted her. And Mira sang. Every evening, as the sun set, she would sit outside her cabin and sing Apache songs. Her voice was clear and strong now. People from miles around would come to listen. As for me, I worked the land. I tended the cattle. And every Sunday, I rode out to the place where Anna was buried. I had moved her body from the Apache village to a hill overlooking the ranch. I planted tulips around her grave. And every week the 7 sisters would come with me. We would stand together in silence. Then Shia would speak. "Thank you, Anna, for giving your life to save ours, for teaching Jesse to love again, for showing us that family is not about blood, it is about choice." And I would add, quietly, "Anna, I kept my promise. I stood with them. I did not run. I did not hide. I chose to fight. And I think you would be proud." One evening, as the sun was setting, Shia and I sat on the porch of my cabin. Her hand rested on her belly. The baby kicked. She looked at me. "Jesse, do you ever regret it, killing Cross?" I thought about it, really thought about it. Then I shook my head. "No, I do not regret killing him. I regret that the world made it necessary." Shia nodded. "I feel the same way." We sat in silence for a while. Then she asked, "Do you think we will ever be safe? Truly safe?" I looked out at the 7 cabins, at the smoke rising from their chimneys, at the women who had survived hell and chosen to rebuild. I do not know. But I know this: we are safer together than we ever were apart. Shia smiled. "That is enough." That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about the question people would ask me for years to come. "Why did you save those 7 Apache girls?" And I would tell them, because sometimes the right choice is the one that costs you everything. They taught me that justice is not always found in a courtroom, that family is not always blood, that strength is not just about muscle and guns, it is about standing up when the world wants you to kneel. They taught me that revenge is not the same as justice, and that sometimes the hardest thing to do is to let go of hate and choose to build instead of destroy. But most of all, they taught me that life is not about surviving. It is about living, truly living, with purpose, with courage, with love. Anna had known that. She had lived that way, and she had died that way. And now, because of her, because of the 7 sisters, I was finally learning to live that way too. The ranch became known throughout the territory. People called it 7 Sons Ranch. They said it was a place where Apache and white settlers worked side by side, a place where women were not just wives and daughters, but leaders and warriors. Some people hated it. They said we were breaking the natural order, that we were dangerous, but others came to see it, to learn from it, to understand that maybe, just maybe, there was another way to live. And slowly, very slowly, things began to change. 3 years after we killed Virgil Cross, Lieutenant Grant returned to the ranch. He was a captain now. He brought news from Washington. The Silver Water map had been studied by the best geologists in the country. Every water source on it was real. Every silver vein existed. The government had declared the water sources public resources. They could not be owned by any individual. They belonged to everyone. As for the silver, the government had decided to split the profits. Half would go to the Apache tribes. Half would go to the territory of Arizona for schools and hospitals. It was not perfect, but it was fair. Grant looked at Shia, now holding her 2-year-old daughter Anna in her arms. "You did this. You could have kept the map, sold it, become rich. But you chose to share it." Shia smiled. "Wealth means nothing if you have no one to share it with." Grant nodded. He looked at me. "And you, Harlan, you could have stayed out of it. Let them die, saved yourself the trouble." I shook my head. There was no choice. Not really. Anna would have wanted me to help them, and I owed her that. Grant smiled. "You are a good man, Jesse Harlan. I did not know about that, but I knew I was trying to be." After Grant left, the 7 sisters and I gathered around the fire like we had done so many times before. Shia spoke first. "We need to talk about the future." Everyone looked at her. She continued, "Little Anna will grow up soon, and there will be other children. We need to teach them, not just to survive, but to live, to read, to write, to know their history." Kaya nodded. "We need a school, Asha agreed, and we need to write down what happened, so people do not forget. Senna said, I can trade for books, supplies, Tala added, and I can teach the children to ride. Neela said, I will teach them about plants. Healing. Mira, her voice now strong and confident, said, and I will teach them to sing. They all looked at me. I took a breath. And I will teach them to build, to farm, to take care of the land. Shia smiled. Then we have a plan. And so Seven Sons Ranch became more than just a home. It became a school, a community, a place where children, both Apache and white, learned together. We taught them reading and writing, hunting and farming, Apache songs and white hymns. We taught them that strength comes from unity, that justice requires courage, and that hate is a poison that destroys the one who carries it. But most importantly, we taught them the story of 7 Apache sisters who were hung to die but refused to give up, the story of a white rancher who chose honor over safety, the story of a woman named Anna who died saving strangers, and the story of how, in the darkest moment, when the world seemed determined to crush them, they chose to rise, like 7 suns at dawn. Years later, when people would ask me what I was most proud of, I would not talk about the ranch, or the crops, or the cattle. I would talk about the children, the Apache children who grew up unafraid, who learned to read and write, who became doctors and teachers and leaders. The white children who grew up respecting Apache culture, who learned that different does not mean lesser, and the children of both worlds who grew up together as friends, as equals, as family. That was Anna's real legacy, not the necklace, not the memory, but the future she made possible. On the 10th anniversary of the day I cut down the 7 ropes, we held a ceremony at the cottonwood tree. The tree was still standing, older, more weathered, but still strong. We hung 7 ribbons from its branches, 1 for each sister, each ribbon a different color, red for Shia, blue for Kaya, green for Asha, yellow for Neela, orange for Senna, purple for Tala, white for Mira, and we hung 1 more, pink, for Anna. The children from the school came, dozens of them, Apache and white. They stood in a circle around the tree. Shia, now gray-haired but still strong, spoke to them. 10 years ago, this tree was a place of death. My sisters and I hung from these branches, left to die by a man who wanted to erase us. But we survived. And we chose not to let hate define us. We chose to build, to teach, to love. She looked at each child. You are the reason we fought. You are the future we believed in. And you are proof that even in the darkest night, the sun will rise again. The children, led by young Anna, now 10 years old, sang an Apache song of gratitude. As I listened, I felt tears on my face. Anna, my Anna, wherever you are, I hope you can see this. I hope you know that your death was not in vain. You saved them, and they saved me, and together we saved the future. That night, as the stars filled the sky, the 7 sisters and I sat around the fire one last time. We were older now, slower. Some of us had scars that would never heal, but we were alive, and we were together. Shia raised a cup of water. To Anna. We all raised our cups. To Anna. Kaya said, to the fallen. To the fallen. Asha said, to the survivors. To the survivors. Neela said, to the healers. To the healers. Senna said, to the builders. To the builders. Tala said, to the children. To the children. Mira said, to the future. To the future. And I said, to family. To family. We drank, and in that moment I understood something I had been searching for my entire life. Home is not a place. It is not a building or a piece of land. Home is the people who stand beside you when the world tries to break you. Home is the choice to love instead of hate. Home is the courage to build instead of destroy. And home is the faith that even when everything falls apart, the sun will rise again. I looked at the 7 women around the fire, warriors, mothers, teachers, friends, my family, and I smiled, because I was finally home. And I understood now what Anna had tried to teach me all along. I cut 7 ropes to save them. But the 7th rope, the one that mattered most, was the one wrapped around my own heart, the rope of guilt, of silence, of fear. They did not just survive, they set me free. And now, every morning when the sun rises, I see 7 suns in the sky, 7 sisters who refused to die, 7 warriors who chose to build instead of destroy, 7 suns at dawn. The end. This story is dedicated to all those who chose love over hate, justice over revenge, and family over blood. May we all have the courage to cut the ropes that bind us and the strength to rise like 7 suns at dawn.